The David Johnson Pukemokemoke Bush Reserve rises steeply out of the Waikato River Plain. It's a remnant that preserves all of the lowland forest species despite a rather checkered history. The 40-hectare forest is now a reserve donated to the nation by the former owner David Johnson. At the time it was transferred to the trust, it was in rather bad shape. It had been logged for kauri, matai, totara and kahikatea in the 1950s. It had been used as a cattle runoff. It was infested with possums, rats, and many of our worst exotic weeds, privet, gorse and pampas, had colonised much of the edge of the bush. Despite these challenges, the Trust has taken on the restoration of the forest to provide, within a 25-year volunteer work plan, what is now a rich example of the lowland forest of the area. We're standing in front of the David Johnson Pukemokemoke Bush Reserve. This hill behind me contains a rich flora of all of the lowland forest species. It was logged about 70 years ago, and the regeneration that occurred after that is a great example of the restoration of native forest, which we have used as a format for establishing native forest in the River Flats. An old logging and farm road takes us into the forest proper and provides a calm and welcome introduction to the reserve. The road opens out into a clearing that's well named the Log Hauler Site. We're standing here in the Log Hauler Site, very well named because some 70 years ago, right here was a steam-driven log hauler. This log hauler ran a wire rope up the valley here and several other valleys in the bush and was hauling out large logs of totara, kahikatea, matai, and dragging them out here and out into the stream. Following that, we had a natural regeneration of manuka, followed by kanuka. And all those stems up there are of kanuka, forming a canopy. And through that canopy, we have our forest trees emerging. And now we'll take a look at some trees which have emerged through the kanuka and are going to form a tree canopy above the kanuka. The kanuka stand that we're standing in has taken at least 70 years to mature since the logging events and has suffered a number of invasions, including grazing stock. However, as we enter the forest, we can see that the kanuka stand canopy has opened up. Light is now penetrating, and over the years a number of tree species have used this nursery to establish. So we have a totara, we have a matai and a kahikatea here, all now entering the forest canopy and having used the nursery that the kanuka provided over the years. This then is the natural regeneration profile that we see throughout New Zealand, where a shrub hardwood canopy, most often of manuka to begin with, which is wind dispersed with tiny seed, rapidly invades new ground and provides a natural nursery for forest species. Jeremy and I are standing underneath a kanuka stand, similar to the one we've just seen. Within this stand, we've got regeneration of native tree species, and we look at a totara. Next door to us here, there's Jeremy showing us a totara, and then across beyond that is a matai. Here are two lovely native trees, totara and matai, now well over 50 years old and growing right up through the kanuka canopy. So this is an establishment of native forest within that canopy, showing the natural regeneration. So we take the lessons that we've learnt from the log hauler site and bring it home down here on the flat. Here this land has been cleared and manuka has been planted at 1 to 2 metre spacings right throughout this flat area. And amongst it we have totara, puketea and kahikatea. After a year or two we'll see that the trees that are in amongst it have grown well within the nursery of manuka. It's hard to imagine this area 10 years ago was in solid privet up to 5 metres tall and 200 stems per square metre, totally impenetrable. We wanted to restore this area to bush. We started cutting the privet, too dangerous. Then we got a machine called T-Rex which cut the privet down to produce a layer of chips into which we sowed grass, and into the grass we've planted manuka. So what we've done here is to replicate the natural process that we saw after logging, and we've cut the time down to just a few years. Early planting showed that rimu, kahikatea and pukemokemoke enjoy this area particularly well, and their survival rate is over 80% within the early Manuka canopy. Defying earlier predictions, we found rimu is one of the great survivors in this context, with young trees now up to 4 meters tall, planted 5 years ago in what is now 7-year-old Manuka. Being a river flat subject to periodic flooding, weed control has become an issue. Convolvulus in particular is a major control problem, but on the other hand, privet regrowth is now a minor issue in comparison. Natural regeneration of forest by Manuka establishment is so widespread that it is now the accepted management process. In nature, the tiny Manuka seed are produced in their many hundreds of thousands per tree. They are spread widely by the wind in late summer and autumn and germinate rapidly, especially on bare soil resulting from overgrazing, erosion or storm. In like manner, planted Manuka provides the shelter that most of our tree species require for establishment, and this has been very successfully carried out at Pukemokemoke, where we now have a large area of planted Manuka within which we have a forest about to emerge within a 10 to 20 year time span. We're now upwards of 10 years after the original removal of privet. The Manuka is over 5 meters tall. It's been growing magnificently well, and in between the Manuka we have planted forest trees, and we can see now just how well those trees have done within that nursery which is Manuka. Here we've replicated what we saw after logging. So here's one of the trees. This is matai, a very common species around here on the river flats. Looks pretty scrawny but will grow into a very big tree. That's matai. Now we have one of our forest hardwoods. This is pukemokemoke. Pukemokemoke also grows into a very large tree and loves these wet river flats that's growing in here. And here we have what is arguably New Zealand's most attractive tree, rimu. Over 2 meters tall here, another one there 3 meters tall, doing famously well. Not a very fast growing tree normally, but just doing so well here. As we move through here, here's a Manuka that we've infilled here just to fill a gap. And as we move out, another rimu. Again, particularly healthy tree. And now the tree that really typifies this area, and there are many, many big standing kahikatea here. This is kahikatea, been planted here 4 years ago. Pretty slow growing to start with, but once it takes off, this will be New Zealand's tallest tree, kahikatea, our tallest tree. And here's a tarata, good infill tree. So the nursery that we created of Manuka is now nursing these forest trees, and we have replicated here what nature normally does on an exposed area. And we have now foreshortened the natural succession process by decades and decades, and we can now walk away from this and let the trees take over and fulfill their purpose and create even more native forests at Pukemokemoke.